Okay, thank you all for coming today. Greetings. Thank you for joining us on the launch of Third World Network's new paper, the East Asia Plant Variety Protection Forum, EAPVP, and UPOV 1991, Implications for Seed Systems in Southeast Asia. This paper critically examines how the Japanese initiative known as EAPVP aggressively promotes adoption of the UPOV 1991 Convention, which can have serious impacts on the national sovereignty and food security of a nation. UPOV 1991 is a rigid framework designed to further and protect commercialized farming structures of industrialized nations, which marginalizes the traditional rights of farmers and their contributions. We will try to finish within an hour, at most maybe an hour, 15 minutes. We will have a presentation first by Sangeeta, followed by reflections from the commentators, and hopefully there will be a time for a few questions. So a short introduction of the presenter and commentators before we proceed. So Sangeeta Shashikant is the author of the EAPVP report. She is legal advisor to Third World Network and the coordinator of its development and intellectual property program. She will give a presentation on the facts and findings in the paper. Then that will be followed by Ms. Nori Ignacio. Nori is the executive director of Southeast Asia Regional Initiative for Community Empowerment, or better known as SEARICE, a regional development organization that promotes and implements community-based conservation, development, and sustainable use of plant genetic resources. Nori has extensive experience in the field of agriculture, biodiversity, food security, and conservation. SEARICE has done extensive research and written on plant variety practice in Vietnam. That's followed by Encik NurFitri Amir Muhammad. He is a microbiologist by training who has done extensive research on the paddy sector in Malaysia and also is a paddy farmer. He has authored a detailed report on the possible impacts of UPOV 1991 implementation in Malaysia. Last but not the least, Mr. Inyaku Tomoya is a food democracy activist, researcher, and advocate. His main focus is GMOs and including gene editing, seed policy, agroecology, food sovereignty, seed sovereignty, and climate justice. Having worked in various advisory capacities, he is currently the advisor to the Civil Institute of Organic Rice Cultivation in Japan and will briefly elaborate on the Japanese experience in implementing PVP. So each discussant will have about 5 minutes before we turn to questions as time permits. So now give the floor to Ms. Sangeeta Shashikant for her presentation.
Thank you very much, Karina, and thank you to everyone that has taken time to participate in this webinar. So let me just turn on my video and let me share the screen. I hope you can see my presentation. So this is the cover page of the paper, and I would encourage you to read it and to share with everyone, because actually it talks about a regional PVP system, which actually a forum where the plant variety protection, the PVP officers meet on a regular basis. But also it discusses on the activities, the motivations, and what happens in the EAPVP forum. And actually, this is what I'm going to present on. And there is a very new development, and I think very few people are actually aware of, not just the workings behind the EAPVP forum, but also the kind of push for regional harmonization that is taking place in this forum. So let me just proceed with my presentation. Now, just as background for those who are not fully aware, and my presentation is not about UPOV or specifically on plant variety protection or the background, but I just want to flag in like 2 slides, just so that if you're not aware of it, you know about it, is that historically, intellectual property protection, which are all intellectual property we talk about, is about monopoly rights. Historically, we do not see that in developing countries, in developing world. It was actually started off the idea from developed countries, okay? And there's a lot of articles and papers that you can read on this. Now, the turn where intellectual property became introduced in developing country began with what we know as the World Trade Organization. I'm sure you have heard of it. It has an agreement known as the TRIPS Agreement, trade agreement on trade-related aspects on intellectual property right. Everybody calls it the TRIPS Agreement. And there is one article which is there, Article 27.3b, which was one of the most contentious articles in that agreement, which says that members shall provide for the protection of plant varieties by patents or by an effective sui generis system or a combination thereof. Sui generis really refers to a unique system, an effective unique system. Okay, it doesn't say anything else. And so if you are a WTO member, and most countries are, then you'll have to put in place the system, except if you are categorized by the UN as a least developed country. Okay. Now, what is plant variety protection? It is effectively a monopoly being given to breeders for like for a very long period of time, normally over new plant varieties. Okay, but the TRIPS agreement does not say all of this. It just says you have to provide an effective system of plant variety protection. This means that governments have full freedom to design the system as per their agricultural system. It just has to be effective. It can be unique. There are no other requirements, okay? But what we see is developing countries are constantly under pressure to adopt the 1991 Act of UPOV, which is the International Union for the Protection of New Plant Varieties. Okay, again, there's a lot of history to this, and I'm not going to go into it, but I'm going to refer to you to books that actually have been written on this. What you need to know is that this is a highly, highly controversial instrument, the subject of many protests in many, many countries. Why? Because the origins of UPOV was conceived and designed by and for the European commercial seed sector. It was negotiated among developed countries, mainly European governments. This is the history of UPOV, for their farming systems to protect their commercial interests. The agricultural practices, interests of the different actors in developing countries have never been, or even Southeast Asia, has never been taken into account. So today's discussion is really about Southeast Asian countries, and these countries were never involved in the negotiation of UPOV, okay? And the WTO TRIPS agreement does not require anyone to join UPOV. Like I said, it just says you need to have an effective system of plant variety protection. And I'm not going to go into it, as I mentioned, but there are many different concerns around UPOV 1991. Let me just flag a few very briefly. One is that it's a one-size-fits-all. So it just assumes that this one kind of monopoly system will work for all agricultural systems and the different actors. Okay, it was done way back, and it does not even reflect all the latest discussions, instruments, like you now have the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants. There's the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources. There is Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing. So, this UPOV does not really recognize all these different rights and obligations under international law. It's quite a rigid PVP system. And again, I'm going to refer you to books on this. It grants extensive monopoly rights to breeders of new varieties. And here there is no flexibility. You cannot say, okay, I want to do it differently, but join UPOV. No, they do not allow it. There are very limited exceptions to breeders' rights, and you cannot expand the flexibilities. And farmers' rights, very importantly, farmers' rights in a lot of our countries in Southeast Asia, farmers' rights, to freely save, use, exchange farm-safe seeds. This is not recognized. And seed saving is, if it's allowed, they say more towards specific crops. And again, that may be subject to payment of royalties. And they do not allow even small farmers to exchange and sell farm-safe seeds, okay? They do not allow mechanisms to prevent misappropriation of local genetic resources. And we know that a lot of farmer varieties are taken and used to develop new varieties. So there are a lot of different problems within UPOV 1991. And so it is one of the most controversial legal instruments. It's the subject of legal challenges, in constitutional courts, public and farmer protests. And so actually few developing countries have joined it. those that have joined it, normally it's because of a lot of pressure and often coming through free trade agreements. And actually, if you look at the expert literature, and so I'm giving you on, if you look on the left, you will see a book, Plant Variety Protection in Developing Countries. And the first few chapters talks about the origins and the concerns experts have with UPOV 1991. And on the right, you'll see a publication that talks about literature on UPOV Convention. And, you will see that many experts do not recommend developing countries to join UPOV 1991 because it was never really developed for the agricultural systems of developing countries. So this is a little bit of the background to now what I'm going to be speaking about is the East Asia Plant Variety Protection Forum. Now, what is it? This idea came out from Japan. In 2007, they organized a workshop on plant variety protection. Japan is a member of UPOV 1991, and they mooted the idea of a harmonized PVP system in the region. Okay, and the first meeting was held in 2008. And this meeting was of Southeast Asian countries, China, Japan, and South Korea. Now, if you look at Southeast Asia, actually only Vietnam and Singapore are members of UPOV 1991, and that's because they signed free trade agreements with the United States. Okay, others are not UPOV members, and actually there are quite a few interesting PVP systems in the region. For instance, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines has a PVP system that is somewhat like UPOV, but then it does have provisions safeguarding farmers' rights. Okay, so the countries in the region most of them are not yet members of UPOV 1991. Okay, so now what is this forum doing? So if you look at the 10th year strategic plan of EAPVP forum, and this was adopted in 2019, the overarching direction is about establishing PVP systems consistent with UPOV Convention, right? And then it says towards achieving all forums members' membership of UPOV on the basis of PVP harmonization and cooperation in the region. And they say this is to achieve food security and sustainable agriculture, okay? Then they have two objectives. One is to have national PVP system that is consistent with UPOV Convention. They said this is to encourage investment in plant breeding. And the second one is to support achievement of UPOV membership. And they're talking of harmonization. And here there is national objectives and regional cooperation objectives. So objective 1 is towards national objectives. Objective 2 is about regional cooperation. But overall, the goal of the strategic plan is 1, to develop PVP systems at the national level that is consistent with UPOV 1991, and 2, to create a harmonized PVC system at the regional level. Okay, and so this is why the EAPVP forum has launched something called EAPVP Asia in 2018. And I'm going to discuss this a bit later in my presentation. And each country that participates in this forum, and all the Southeast Asian PVP office participate, they develop annually their implementing strategy of how they're going to become members of UPOV 1991. Which is quite shocking because many of these countries have laws which are very different from UPOV 1991. So we are seeing kind of a top-down process where they participate in these meetings, they decide, and then they come back and push that PVP UPOV-based law at the national level. Okay, so let me just go. You can, when we share the slides, you can see this is national objectives, and I'm not going to go into it, the regional objectives. And the regional cooperation is about how to do enforcement. It's about harmonizing all this way of granting PVP, accelerating the grant of PVP at the regional level. So it may sound good to you, but actually let's kind of unpack actually what does this regional harmonization mean for Southeast Asian region, and I'm going to come to that. But let us first discuss who is behind this forum. So we see that Japan is very much behind this forum. Japan is the main financier and host of the forum. It is supported by UPOV Secretariat. They'll be giving technical input. We do not know whether they're giving financial support, but they are clearly very much there, standing side by side with Japan. And now Vietnam has been roped in to also champion this cause. The host of the PVP office is the Japan Association of Techno Innovation, JATAF, which is an organization in Japan. Now, if you look at their rules of procedure, what do they say? Members that are participating in the forum can receive support from donors, but you must consult with the donors, okay, how you're going to implement it. And so normally the donor is Japan, I guess. And the website is hosted by Japan. And it says that the UPOV office extends assistance to the foreign activities under the cooperative framework of government of Japan in accordance with UPOV's priorities. Not in accordance with national priorities, in accordance with UPOV priorities, an organization that countries in the region have not joined yet, okay? And if you look at Japan's implementing strategy, Japan's implementing strategy, they have their own individual implementing strategy that they present during the EAPVP forum of meetings that are held. They are very clear. They are saying their plan is to ensure Southeast Asian countries join UPOV 1991 and then build a regional PVP system for the application and examination of PVP in the region, okay? So why they are doing it is because they say that their own number of PVP filings have dropped, have stagnated. They are worried about that Japan is losing competitiveness in foreign markets, especially in Southeast Asia. So they are trying to promote other countries in the region to adopt UPOV 1991, because UPOV 1991 then will actually limit farmers' rights, which is right now allowed in many countries, right? You can exchange, you sell. So the UPOV, Japan's strategy, and they also issued an intellectual property strategy in 2025. Actually, it is dated April 2021, but it says 2025. And it talks about the importance of Southeast Asia markets for Japan and how Japan will use the forum to achieve its objectives and get East Asian countries to join UPOV 1991. Okay, because their idea is they want to have a PVP system where their breeders can get protection immediately, faster in all the countries in Southeast Asia. And so their idea, and I'm going to come and show you, is really to extend control and to limit farmers' rights. Because if you see what is happening in Japan, and Inyaku, I'm sure will highlight it, is Japan has eliminated all farmers' rights in Japan. And they do not allow any kind of export, right, of varieties. So, I mean, we're going to hear about there are quite a few things happening, and their intent is to export that model to countries in the region. So in summary, they play a dominant role. They are the key donor. They are the secretariat. They are there in all annual meetings. They will deliver the welcoming remarks, even if, say, Laos, Cambodia, or any other country is hosting it. Japan will deliver, together with UPOV, the opening remarks. And if you look at the 10-year strategy plan of the forum, it came from Japan, okay? And Japan is clear that, this is all about maintaining Japan's competitiveness in the region and doing it through EAPVP forum and regional harmonization. They want to expand their proprietary seed portfolio, okay? So now, what about other governments and entities? So let's see. So who is participating in these forum meetings? Okay, and this is kind of shocking because in addition to the PVP offices of Southeast Asia, China, Japan, and South Korea, okay, because it's a forum of these offices, we find that throughout the years, we find who is participating. UPOV Secretariat. Naktambo is a Dutch center that deals with quality of, and with planting, with seed. The European Community Plant Variety Office, the US Department of Agriculture, Guineas and SEMA in France is the French seed industry, the US Patent and Trademark Office, the German Federal Plant Variety Protection Office, even Argentina, in 1 or 2 meetings, there was even Ghana PVP office. Now, if you look, who is absent? The people from the region are absent in these meetings, right? Except for the PVP offices, right? It's attended by foreign guests, right? Who, and I'm going to show you the economic interests, but it is who is absent, right? The people, the farmer groups, the civil society, the academics that are actually discussing, even the expert that question whether UPOV is the right approach, right? So the question is, who is driving, whose interest is driving this forum that our PVP officers participate in? So we look at what the UPOV, the forum is doing, okay? They talk about technical assistance, and I guess PVP officers are participating because they get some level of technical assistance. It's like a club where they can discuss with other people. So from their perspectives, I imagine it's a good thing. And it's always good to have sharing of experiences. But if you look at all the materials of the forum, it only promotes the adoption of UPOV 1991, that other alternatives are not acceptable. It actually teaches and has presentations on how to overcome national opposition. So if you see my paper, I talk about how Ghana was brought in to explain how Ghana overcome the opposition at the national level so that the country can join UPOV. So they're talking about how to overcome national opposition. We also see the presentations providing inaccurate and misleading information. For instance, it keeps talking about Vietnam and how the sweet potato, PVP applications increased on joining UPOV. But then there is a Vietnam study that actually says there's not a single PVP application on UPOV. And this misleading information is then repeated by Japan, by Germany, by UPOV Secretariat, okay? And they only speak about the benefits. They do not give any kind of diverse perspective, diverse voices. It's all as if the whole agricultural system has only one kind of stakeholder. And so they promote only one-size-fits-all approach of UPOV 1991. And interestingly, they will only present highly selective information. They will not talk about situations where, because UPOV is not suitable to the agricultural system, there are countries where the entire PVP system is just dysfunctional, right? For instance, the African region that has 17 countries, the UPOV system doesn't really work for them because it's completely dysfunctional. So we find that the forum, given who is there, who is participating, seems to be about grooming and committing the Southeast Asia PVP office to become champions of UPOV, and then to come to the national level and to undermine national PVP laws that are protecting farmers' rights, that have mechanisms against biopiracy, etc. Now, why, you ask, why are these guests very interested? It's because they have economic interests. If you look at the export of seed, okay, France, Germany, Japan, Netherlands in particular is a big player, and France as well, and the United States are major exporters of seeds, okay? And even other EU countries, I put that, so if you see on the left, right, other EU countries, 26%, but actually in other EU countries is actually mostly driven by Netherlands as well. They're just growers. The PVP holder is actually from Netherlands, okay? So these are their economic interests. And these are the same companies that control the proprietary seed market. So if you see on the right, companies from France, Germany, Japan, they control over half of the global seed market. And they also control the fertilizer, the chemical sector as well. Because a lot of the seeds, you use it with the chemicals as well, right? And you'll see that in my paper. So this is why they participate in the forum. And these same countries, they are the ones filing most of the companies from these countries are the ones filing most of the PVP. If you see, I put here, this is about non-resident PVP application. And actually this information is from UPOV's document itself. That means to say, who are the ones filing the most in foreign countries, non-resident PVP applications is those coming from US, Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, France, right? So if you take US, Netherlands, Germany, France, and Japan, they represent 67% of these PVP applications. And that is why they are interested in promoting UPOV, because they are the ones filing it. They are interested in promoting UPOV in Southeast Asia, which is a growing seed market. Yeah, I hope you're following me. So what are some of the concerns we have? I think first and foremost, the big concern is undermining of national democratic decision-making process. Today, we have Southeast Asian countries, and they have distinct non-UPOV PVP systems. And this is about carefully balancing objectives. Often there are consultations, and that's how these PVP systems have been developed. In any case, if you're not party to UPOV, you can always change your PVP system, right? To make it more inclusive, to make it more balanced, to ensure that it has the relevant mechanisms to protect food security, to protect agriculture. And we see that Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand have got PVP laws, have broader exceptions on farmers' rights. I mean, they are not perfect, but they have broader exceptions to protect farmers' rights. And they have measures to protect national interests, for instance, to prevent biopiracy. Malaysian has good provisions on ensuring seed availability, ensuring seed affordability, protecting and making sure that countries have got that is explicitly stated in the law. Okay, that requiring, if you want a PVP, you have to come and make sure the material is available, at affordable price, etc. Okay, all these mechanisms are not allowed to be explicitly stated under UPOV, right? But then we see PVP officers undermining these national laws, participating in the EAPVP forum that is pushing for UPOV 1991. And I think it is, and as they participate more and more, they feel more and more pressure to adopt UPOV 1991, okay? And so if you join UPOV 1991, a lot of these provisions that we say are the good ones, provisions in PVP laws, will be deleted. Okay, so let us just move on. Now, I spoke about regional harmonization. So there's something called EAPVP Asia. This was a pilot project that was launched by Japan and Vietnam in 2018. And it is to incentivize Southeast Asian countries to join UPOV 1991 and to expedite regional harmonization. So what does it do? So right now, each country has its own PVP system. If anybody wants protection, you have to go country by country, because then you will only go to country, the breeder will go to the country that it is most interested in. The regional harmonization will standardize all this, the way it is filed. It can be that, one grant, it applies to all the countries in the harmonization, so you will get more monopolies granted to a lot of foreign breeders potentially. And we see this happening in other regions, right? Now, the development of this thing is with financial assistance from Japan and technical assistance from UPOV, and it's being done in various phases. And what we know is there have been at least 9 meetings, and there could have been more on this project that were held in Vietnam. Okay. Now, to participate in this regional harmonization, which I'm sure, I think PVP officers will want to participate. And so to incentivize Southeast Asia to participate in this, they say, no, you have to join UPOV first. Okay. So now this development is very worrying, because this is about pushing UPOV model and to, as a carrot, right, they have put forward this EAPVP Asia regional harmonization idea. Now, what is it? I hope you can see this. As I mentioned, it is to standardize and harmonize how you get PVP protection and to expedite it, you getting it in all countries immediately. So there can be, again, we are getting this only from information that is out there in the public domain. You know, if you're an applicant, you would then file one application, presumably, that will be applicable in all countries, and then there'll be only one testing of whether the variety is distinct, uniform, and stable, and then there'll be a grant, okay? Now, it's not very clear whether, you know, the grant is harmonized. That means to say if it's granted once, it's granted everywhere, or how the thing works. It's not fully clear to me, but the idea is harmonization, okay? And then the plan is then to integrate it with UPOV's databases, right? And this is all coming from UPOV, from the EAPVP forum documents, okay? Now, question is, who will benefit if there was such a thing? Now, to understand who will benefit, I thought it's good for us to look at where there is already a regional system. Let's look at the European Union. They have a regional community plant variety office, okay? So if you look at EU, all right, they already have harmonized. Actually, the country that uses the most is Netherlands. Again, remember, Netherlands is the guest that also participated in EAPVP forum. They are their EU reports say more than 1/3 of PVP applications received are from Netherlands, right? And then it's followed by France, Germany, United States, and Switzerland. And you can see here on the left, within the EU, there is one country within the EU which benefits the most, Netherlands, because they are the main user of the regional system. And then you have France and Germany behind Netherlands, and maybe a bit of Spain. But most of the countries have very low level of applications that originate from them, okay? Then outside of the EU, the main user is United States, right? I don't see how many Southeast Asian countries have used the system. No, right? So you can see that whenever there is a regional system, we are not there and we are not going to be using it, right? Most countries in Southeast Asia, and there are a few countries that will use it, right? So even within EU, the US has the most outside of the EU. Switzerland has the second most, UK, right? And then you have got maybe one from Brazil, two from India. So if you're a non-UPOV member, you can also use the EU system, okay? In fact, we see India using it more than other UPOV members, right? So, and we also see within EU, there's a high degree of concentration in plant breeding. So the top 15 applicants that are listed, the top 5 of those 15, they own most 74% of the vegetable PVP applications, 60% of the agricultural PVP applications, 52% of the ornamental species, and 50% of fruit species. And mostly the applicants are from Netherlands, France, Germany, and the US. Okay? So even if you have within the region a regional system, you may have 1 or 2 players, and I think Japan is putting itself as the key player that is considering that it will be the key player that is going to benefit from the regional system. Now, what will happen to the other countries? Okay, maybe breeders from your countries are unlikely to use it because it would be quite more expensive. But I would say that just because you have an increase in the PVP applications does not mean that you have an increase in availability of seeds and propagating material, okay? Because right now, if a breeder is interested to get protection in your country, they will come to your country. In this case, they will just apply protection, but they may not come and make the seeds available in your country. but they want to secure the plant variety protection rights because then they can prevent other national breeders from competing with you. Yeah, I hope you understand what I'm saying, yeah? So right now the system is, if I'm a breeder and I'm interested in making certain varieties available in Malaysia, I'll come in, I'll make an effort to seek protection. But with the regional system, anybody can just file PVP applications just to prevent any national local breeder from using any kind of material. So it's more anti-competitive. It's about restricting competition, right? And most I think Southeast Asian countries would benefit from having your own PVP system. And if you see, even within our PVP system, a lot of the applicants are by foreign countries, right? But this regional system will be even more to the benefit of commercial breeders from like developed countries, from Japan, right? Because they want to expedite the registration of their PVP rights. And this hinders development, breeding, competition from local actors. Okay, then we have got diminished role of PVP officers, loss of sovereignty, because the more you harmonize at the regional level, this means to say the PVP management decision-making over time, even if it's not the case in the beginning, will happen at the regional level. Okay, so of course, National PVP Office can expect less revenue, but we will see increased foreign influence because now you can see the whole thing is anchored and overseen by Japan and UPOV. So over time, we'll see expertise and the role of national PVP officers diminish, loss of national sovereignty, and you may even find yourself unable to implement necessary measures to protect national interests because increasingly everything is regionally harmonized. So the pathway to regional harmonization is going to be very, very problematic for the region. And I think it does undermine the development of robust seed systems in Southeast Asia. So my last slide to mention, and of course, the entire system is based on UPOV, which is already a problematic legal system for countries in the region and not advisable for countries in the region. So my last point is, I think Southeast Asian countries have to critically reassess their involvement in this forum. And if you are a civil society organization, a farmer group, we need to question why the PVP officers are participating in this forum, and kind of undermining the entire participation is undermining national processes, national implementation, national laws, right? And if they are going to participate, then before they participate, they have to change the direction, the strategy of the forum, ensure that discussions are more evidence-based, ensure there is more diverse perspectives participating, not just the perspectives of US, EU, Japan, and UPOV Secretariat. Ensure the Secretariat is independent, neutral, ensure transparency and accountability. Because without this, we are basically just saying the entire PVP system is really controlled by UPOV and foreign interests, right? And of course, we have to really question whether EAPVP Asia is really in the interest of Southeast Asia. And if we cannot do these meaningful reforms, then we really need to consider Southeast Asian country to withdraw from the forum, because otherwise it's just compromising our national interest. So with that, thank you very much. Yeah, over to you, Karina.
Thank you, Sangeeta. We have questions coming in already from the floor. I would encourage all of you who have any questions, please list them. I will pass the floor to Nori now for her comments, especially through her knowledge of the implementation of UPOV in Vietnam and its impacts. I will repost the link to the report that Nori authored based on her research on the ground. Just for information, 2 Southeast Asian countries are members of UPOV, that being Singapore and Vietnam, because of their trade agreement with the US. Over to you, Nori.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. First, let me congratulate Sangeeta and TWN for this very timely and important publication. We are now seeing the aggressive move of the UPOV Secretariat in collusion with private seed sector, particularly here in Asia. The Asia Pacific Seed Association, or APSA, and in the Philippines, the PSIA, or the Philippine Seed Industry Association, with very strong support from the Dutch and Japanese governments. We are seeing a number of countries in Southeast Asia that are in the process of joining UPOV, such as Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia, and Malaysia. In most cases, the decision to join is tied up with trade agreements with developed countries, which make it a condition for their trading partner to join UPOV. So many of these countries, which are in the process of joining UPOV, are using Vietnam as argument for joining UPOV. They believe that the agricultural development in Vietnam, specifically the progress in plant breeding, is attributable to the membership of Vietnam to UPOV, as alluded to by the UPOV Secretariat through the study that they have commissioned to supposedly assess the contribution of plant breeding to agricultural development in Vietnam since its UPOV membership. The study is actually being used by UPOV to bolster its image and convince other developing countries to join UPOV. It was just like a desk study focused on 3 crops: rice, corn, and sweet potato. The attempt is to convince readers through some calculations that have no direct link with protected varieties. Case in point is the claim that yields of rice, corn, and sweet potato have significantly increased, and the biggest increase was on sweet potato, which does not have PVP application, not a single application. So how can you link the UPOV membership of Vietnam with the progress in breeding of sweet potato? The other claim in the study is that there was a big increase in PVP applications, especially on rice, implying that the protection accorded by the UPOV encourages breeders to apply for protection. But in reality, based on our interviews with plant breeders in Vietnam, several of them have expressed that they are compelled to apply for PVP to protect their innovation from misappropriation, but still think that it is an unnecessary additional expense. Let me read direct quote from one of the plant breeders we interviewed from Vietnam, Academy of Agricultural Sciences. And I quote, "There are 6 new corn varieties and 13 new rice varieties that we have not applied for protection, but are already sold to companies. We do not see any need for PVP. It is just an additional expense." End of quote. So the public plant breeders in Vietnam also admitted that farmers are at the losing end, as the price of protected varieties are claimed to be 6 to 8 times higher than other commercial seeds. In reality, it is the private seed companies who benefit the most because the plant breeders cannot maintain the PVP certificate, as they need to pay annually to maintain their ownership. So in most cases, they end up selling the rights to seed companies, which have the capacity to commercialize the seeds. In fact, I have just visited our farmer partners in Vietnam last month, and I learned that many of the seed clubs have stopped selling seeds because the government has become stricter in implementing the law. So the farmers are afraid that they might be violating the law if they continue to sell seeds. At one point in time, the seed clubs have reached almost 400 all over Mekong Delta, and they were able to supply almost 40% of the seed demand in the whole Mekong Delta. While in the same period, the formal seed sector was only providing about 10% of the seed demand. So by formal seed sector, I mean both the public and the seed companies, private seed companies. So that's the seed clubs were actually providing good service to smallholder farmers, supplying good quality seeds and affordable price. So the real impact of UPOV to Vietnam is that, one, public research funding has been reduced and in some cases totally gone, forcing institutions to focus on crops and traits with commercial value rather than conservation. So I would like to read again another quote from the study that we made. This was from academicians from the Vietnam Academy of Agricultural Sciences in Hanoi. And I quote, "Particularly in 2008, Decree 115 of Vietnam has declared the autonomy of the research arms of universities, instructing us to actively seek for our own funding. This is very challenging. We have to earn to support our operations. I guess that's more than enough motivation to apply for protection for our varieties in order to survive. So that means the interest of plant breeders from the public sector in Vietnam to apply for protection is more for their own survival because they don't have any funds coming from the government anymore to continue their research. In fact, in our study, when we asked the plant breeders what kind of reward they want for the varieties that they develop, and most of them were saying that they would like continued support for their research, financial support, advanced studies, or exposure in other countries, but they never mentioned anything about protection of their plant variety. And also the local seed companies are closing down in Vietnam, especially the small ones. And I want to read another quote from the interviews that we made. And I quote, "We compete with very big multinational companies with capacities to sell not only seeds, but pesticides and other agricultural inputs. We simply cannot compete." This is from some local seed companies in southern Vietnam. So in effect, it is the small farmers in Vietnam who are at the losing end. And in fact, one researcher from a plant breeding institution in North Vietnam also told us that this PBP law may have varied effects in southern Vietnam. I believe the trend is on selling land. After selling, they can move to other sector and earn more than farming. Here in the north, it is fairly complicated. Farmers cannot sell, so they will rely on rental or leasing their lands, with which they will get only as high as $200 US dollars or as low as 100 US dollars per cropping season. This is from one of the researchers we interviewed from the plant breeding institution in North Vietnam. So I only have 5 minutes, so if you have other questions about this study, you can ask me later. And we have shared with you the link. I just want to end my intervention by quoting the quote that plant breeder from Agricultural Genetics Institutes in Hanoi have shared with us. This is a quotation from Charles Darwin. "If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institution, great is our sin." That's what he told us. So you can see that even public plant breeders in Vietnam are not happy with the plant variety protection. I'll end here. Thank you,
Thank you,
Karina.
Nori, for that very important sharing. And we can see how UPOV 1991 has impacted Vietnam. Yeah, higher seed costs, closure of seed clubs, reduction of farmers' varieties, and farmers truly suffering. We will pass now the floor to Encik Amir. Mr. Amir, who will tell us about the report which he wrote on the possible impacts of UPOV 1991 implementation in Malaysia and give some of his comments as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Karina. I hope you can hear me. So my comment is on the Sangeeta's presentation. Yeah? So the East Asia Plant Variety Protection Forum raised significant concern regarding the true purpose, impact, and its impact on national sovereignty and democratic legislative processes. Yeah. This is what I see. So firstly, the EAPVP forum, it appears to operate as a grooming organization for UPOV Secretariat's agenda. So while being promoted as a platform for regional cooperation, so it's consistent promotion of UPOV compliant framework and principles, so even among non-UPOV member like Malaysia, to suggest the objective is actually clearly guiding countries towards eventually to UPOV accession. So this approach can be seen as a form of institutional pressure and gradually conditioning national intellectual property landscapes to align with UPOV specific interpretation of breeders' rights. So more critically, I think the forum activities could be considered very problematic, if not outright illegal. Yeah? Because in their content and direction, particularly in the vast majority of its member is not UPOV member. So when a forum actively promotes or even dictates the adoption of UPOV style PVP law, while its participating nation have their own sovereign PVP legislation or in the process of developing them, so uh, this raised questions on external interference of the nation's law. For this non-UPOV member, aligning with the forum UPOV-centric recommendation could directly contradict or undermine their existing national law. So that's why I said it may be illegal, or you know, which are designed to reflect local context and needs. So perhaps most importantly, the EAPVP forum's influence undermines the democratic process of proposing and drafting national law. So by having foreign nations and even international secretariat to significantly influence and dictate what a country plant variety protection law should be, so it bypass and devalue the legitimate domestic legislative avenue. So the appropriate and democratic method of developing and enacting law is through robust consultation with the nation's own people, actually, including farmers, civil societies, even breeders, yeah, and other stakeholders, and of course the elected representative in parliament. So any external body or forum that seeks to preempt or heavily influence this process, uh, we can say that it is a very problematic processes. So in terms of consultation processes, we need to remember that many times organizations like Malaysian Food Sovereignty Forum (FKM), like us, we are invited to attend what were termed as consultation sessions. So, but these often turn out to be just a little more than briefing session. So the format of this greeting frequently undermine genuine participation in several ways. Like it is a briefing, not consultation. So it's mostly most of the time it's overcrowded, time constraints, and the agenda is predetermined. It's a lack of flexibility, and of course, there is no mechanism on follow up and feedback. In our case, they said they have done consultation with us 2 times, just 2 times, and then that's it. There's no follow ups after that until recently. Yeah? So uh, I want to share that this time now is a critical moment for Malaysia. So since 2019, the Ministry of Agriculture has consistently stated its intention to amend the Protection of New Plant Varieties Act to facilitate Malaysia accession to UPOV Convention. So for the past 6 years, civil society organizations and concerned citizen and farmers group have protested, argued against this proposed amendment. But you know, despite the persistent efforts, so the amendment was not tabled until recently. Just last month, the Minister of Agriculture just announced a plan to table it in the Parliament at the end of this July, in the Parliament session. So tomorrow, maybe it marks our final protest. Maybe I hope it's not in Putrajaya against the government decision. So we earnestly hope that the amendment will not be tabled this time, and we appeal for prayers and support in this crucial endeavor to protect our national interest. Thank you, Karina.
Thank you, Amir. You raised a very important question of national sovereignty. With the PVP officers of our countries participating in a forum, which may not necessarily align with our domestic policies and laws, overriding our domestic democratic processes and the rights of our stakeholders as well, our important stakeholders. I'll now pass the floor to Mr. Inyaku Tomoya. Mr. Inyaku, we appreciate your comments on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to Sangeeta for shedding light on such a critical issue. My focus today is on the recent development surrounding Japan's Plant Variety Protection PVP Act. In 2020, the Japanese government revised the PVP Act. Prior to this revision, seed savings registered variety was basically permissible. However, the updated act imposes an absolute ban on this practice, with no exceptions, unless explicit breeder's consent is obtained. But in public institutions give their consents to local farmers. So inside Japan, it doesn't really change so much. However, the primary intent behind this revision was less about promoting Japanese seed exports and more about preventing their unauthorized use outside of Japan. The Japanese government's agriculture policy is fundamentally premised on large-scale imports of agricultural products from the United States. Consequently, it has consistently pursued policies that suppress domestic agricultural production. As a direct result, Japan's food self-sufficiency rate has fallen to 38%, and the number of farmers continues to decrease. The recent surge in rice prices due to the insufficient domestic rice production, has become a significant issue, currently destabilizing the government. The government's justification for sacrificing food self-sufficiency is its ambition to expand agricultural products export. This explains why the previous PVP Act revision initially focused on prohibiting the export of some of Japanese seeds that could potentially compete with Japan's agricultural exports. In May, Japanese government unveiled its renewed agricultural export strategy, with a core component being another planned revision of PVP Act next year. In next year, the government is planning to revise PVP Act again. Unlike the 2020 amendment, this upcoming revision will place a strong emphasis on facilitating export of Japanese seeds. This raises a crucial question. How does the Japanese government intend to reconcile the inherent conflict between promoting agricultural exports and boosting seed exports? The government plans to introduce a new mechanism called a strategic overseas license. This system would permit seed exports under a special license, contingent on an agreement that a resulting produce will not be sold in the Japanese in the foreign market during the export period. In essence, Japan is arbitrarily imposing a cultivation prohibition period for its own economic benefit. This is an absurd and unjustifiable restriction on farmers' rights, and I highly doubt its feasibility. Furthermore, the Japanese government is pressuring other Asian governments to revise their own PVP acts. I firmly believe that we must collectively resist this misguided version. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tomoya. Those are very important warnings to us. Mr. Tomoya highlighted how the space keeps shrinking, leading to corporate capture of seed and food systems with production focusing on export crops to the detriment of food security within the country. So now we're done today. I think we've answered all the questions within the chat as well. We did very well in terms of time. I'm just going to ask Sangeeta if she has any last things to add, any of the speakers, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. It's 5 now. We can afford another 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you so much. And thank you for the reference. Mr. Tomoya has just put a reference of necessary information in the chat. Thank you.
I think very interesting reflections, and I think there have been quite interesting research that, for instance, SEARICE, Malaysia, Amir have done, Mr. Tomoya as well. And I think if you can put links in the chat for everyone on all these different research, that would be actually very useful. There is also an organization many of you all may already know called UPOV, which was really set up to monitor UPOV and its work and to undertake research, in PVP. Maybe Karina, you can also add the link. Yeah, I think what we are seeing is really a challenge to Southeast, because Southeast Asia, actually in Malaysia, in Thailand, we have quite functional PVP systems. If I just look at Malaysia, actually Malaysian PVP system has quite a few unique features. It's of course not perfect, how we would like to see it, but it has some unique features. It's broader farmers' rights. It has some good provisions about making sure seed is available, affordable, government taking measures, putting conditions on the PVP applicant, saying that if you want PVP, you have to deposit the sample nationally. Make sure they have to telling them that you have to make sure within 3 years you have to make it available. So there's some good provisions in our national law, and all of this will be removed if Malaysia were to join UPOV 1991. Now, what we are seeing in the region is really an export of dysfunctional system into Southeast Asia, right? So to exclude the local actors, right, the farmers that actually use the seeds, the other local stakeholders, local communities from the entire decision-making process, from discussions. And all these decisions are then being taken outside and then coming back and imposing. And we actually see the export of dysfunctional systems like in Japan being pushed eventually into our country. And then the plan is to harmonize regionally on the basis of this kind of systems. So it's very, very concerning, and I think we need to create a lot of awareness with our PVP officers, raise letters. We need to question. I think the next meeting of EAPVP forum is in early August. We should question, why are you participating in these forums that is very clearly driven by very specific foreign interests and Japan that have very specific economic interests, right? Why do we participate in this forum and adopt the agenda, right? We have our own systems. We should be speaking to our own constituencies and develop our laws and systems based on that. So we really have to engage with the different, with parliamentarians, with different ministries to raise this question. What is happening is extremely problematic, actually. Yeah. So yeah, that's from me.